Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm just going to go through some Phonics Shed updates with you all. So I'll just wait for a moment to see if anybody else is joining. So lots of these updates they might be older updates, they might be from the past year, or they might be fairly recent. I just thought it would be really good to get anything really from the last year or so and put it all together into one presentation. I know some teachers do and pay to join our Phonics Shed leaders training, which is really, really helpful. And our trainer Amelia regularly goes through updates in those meetings. So I thought it'd be really useful to do that, but in a webinar situation so that everyone can see and we're all on the same page, just in case you didn't realise something had changed. We're always trying to make it up to date and change it and improve it all the time. And actually, it was really lovely making this, seeing all the different things that we've changed and how far we've come since we first created it. Now, my name's Caris. I often do these webinars, and I also do lots of the chats with schools before they purchase Phonics Shed or if they're trialing Phonics Shed. So it is a product that I know quite well. If you've got any questions, if there are any that I can't for any reason answer, if they're really specific detailed ones, I'll always try and answer them if I can, or I'll go to our trainers or content team and can get back to you. So please feel free to use the Q&A and post in there as we go. It shouldn't take a really long time, but we'll just see. There's more than I thought there would be. So we're going to start now. So Phonics Shed updates. This will also be recorded. So first of all, starting with our guidance. The guidance document has been updated based on feedback, and to also make it easier to read, it has been split into 5 sections. So you can find the Phonics Shed teaching guidance if you go to Phonics Shed, select whole scheme information from the drop down, and then you'll find the teaching guidance here. And the document has also been updated. That is a really, really important document. What I also love about the digital document is you can, of course, do Control F, and if there's something really specific that you want to find, you can use that to find those things. But it's been reorganised in a much more user-friendly way. Now, lesson plans, you might have noticed this already. They've had a general glow up. They've had the master template has been changed, and there are some changes. So one of them are that the general guidance is on page 2 only of a set of plans rather than within each plan. So it just keeps it nice to the point and you know where you've got to look. Now, things here, you have lesson specific guidance, so that'll be any guidance specific to the lessons which are included in this particular set, and then you've got general guidance, which is more generally for the whole chapter. There are things in there such as one example that was given to me, like different width of lines in resources that you might use depending on the age of the early years child, how big you want those lines, whether you want any lines for them to write on, things like that. So just to follow any school policy on that or go with the lines the same that they have in their current literacy book. But there are lots of really useful information there too. We also have new overview grids in the lesson plans. This is a really lovely way to be able to have a look at what you are teaching that week, resources you will need, and what the focuses are. You've got the characters on the top right-hand side. And if you are really, really familiar with Phonics Shed and you've taught it using it for many months, you might then be able to teach from this grid. But it's really important to say that I would still go and have a look at the full detailed individual lesson plan and look over that first before just using this, just because there is so much detailed information in those. I wouldn't want you to miss out. So they're not instead of the detailed lesson plans at all. They're just a really useful overview grid. Now, other things we've done, so in the recap activities, right at the beginning of a lesson, activity 1 is usually recapping a previous GPC. Activity 2 is either a chapter 1 activity, so recap from one of those elements, or a recap on high frequency words, and they are alternated. So you will usually have 2 of one and 3 of another, and then they'll alternate each week so that then you have 3 of one and 2 of the other. So those follow a really nice rotation now. They just make it really consistent. The other thing we have done based on feedback is we have swapped the song and story in the whole group section. So we've done the story first and then the song comes later, just to reinforce the narrative of the story. Other extra things we've started to include are definitions for harder words in the story section, and we've included those in child speak, so you can use that to explain to your class if you come across a word that you think they might not have heard before, to explain what that means. And we've also really explicitly put blending and segmenting practice in there as well from feedback. In the decodable word cards here, we've got included word cards, which are available on our store, or you can write them. You do not have to have the word cards. You can write them on a whiteboard. They are also available to download. Now, I would say it will, although they're not cheap, it would be cheaper to purchase these from our store because there are so many rather than printing them off. The downloadable flashcards of these decodable word cards are more there if you had the set and then potentially misplaced one or two of them. There are so many, but they are there on the store if you wanted to purchase decodable word cards for this section of the lesson. But of course, you can just write them on a whiteboard. The independent activity, it's the same activity differentiated, and it's either got a reading or writing focus. The additional suggestion down here will be the other one. So if this one is writing, this one will be reading, and so forth. If you have a class who generally their reading level is quite high and they do well in that, and you would rather use the writing activity, you can do that. It will either be this one, or if this one is reading, you can choose the one from down here. So that's absolutely okay for you to swap those if you think that will benefit your class more. Now, the plenary has also got a new set structure. This is not probably the same for chapter 1. Chapter 1 is pre-reading and writing, so that one will differ slightly. But from chapter 2 onwards, the plenary has 5 parts. So it has see, listen and hear section, read, write, and then the lesson close, which is praise and next time. So it's really nice to keep that consistency of the routine there. Okay, so updates to chapter 1, which is pre-reading and writing. We have renamed the consolidation weeks as week 1 and week 2 to show they are compulsory within the planning. The content has just been generally updated and refreshed. And also, if you want to pre-teach, there's the option to use the nursery rhyme week planning and resources or suggestions for the classroom areas, which used to be called continuous provision. We've changed it to suggestions for classroom areas. I'll come back to nursery rhyme week in one of the other slides as well, if you'd like some more information on that. So updates for chapter 2. We have included VE word endings. I think this is in set 6, if I'm correct. I think it is. They're taught as an exception, and they have always been taught as an exception, but it's been included to link with the national curriculum objectives appendices. And because it's been written in there, we've included it explicitly. There's also a new flashcard for voiced S for Sam the Snake with a thought bubble of Eliza the Zebra. You can also download the flashcards from our classroom resources section on the website, so you don't have to purchase a new flashcard if you didn't want to. Chapter 3, a few of you might already be aware of this. We had a new character introduced called Titch the Witch, and this was chapter 3, set 5. Now, again, one of the reasons that we did this is because TCH is in the spelling appendix of the national curriculum, so we decided to include it as a trigraph. It was already in chapter 4C as an alternative to CH, and that's because some accents decode this as ch. I was talking with our content lead, and I personally don't if I think about the word kitchen or witch. It's just I don't pronounce the T and CH, whereas she's from a very different location and she did pronounce chin almost, so did them separately. Now, Titch the Witch has got a new action, which is the hat. It's in the new planning there. There are also 2 teaching books. We've got Titch the Witch, which introduces the new character, and we've also got Titch and the Ouch, which is the comparison story between TCH and CH. And then we've also got the decodable book, Butch the Witch's Cat, and the flashcards. Now, all of these books and flashcards are available online on the platform, or they are also available to purchase via the store if you did want to do those and you did want to have them as in physical form. So the reason we have decided to include it in this way is it just makes it more explicit. It will not appear in the phonics screening check, but it is included to match up with Year 1 spelling appendices, which is why we decided to create a new character. Now, Chapter 4A updates. Word endings SE and ORE are more explicitly taught to enable children to spell a wider range of words. And the reason we've decided to do this is because we felt like teaching transferable knowledge linked to common exception words will enable pupils to spell a wider range of words rather than just including them as common exception words. So SE ending, for example, would be words such as house and horse, but also because and please. So how it makes those different sounds at the ends of words. And then also ORE and how it stops it becoming a schwa. If we think about the words doctor and tractor compared to the words more and before. So all of these things really kind of link into fluency and children's reading ability, but also unlocks those spelling skills for all of these different words as well. And then we've got Chapter 4B, which is Zhuzh. Now, this didn't have a character before. We've got Zhuzh the robot. Particular spelling that he is representing is on his tummy, and that represents his sound that he is making. And that is in Chapter 4B, Set 7. I quite like Zhuzh the robot. He's quite sweet. And then any updates for Chapter 4C. So 4C is Year 2, where sometimes it can be started in Year 1. So there's a new overview and it has been organised in new sections, which I've just listed up here. So these are all the different sections it has been in. It must follow that progression. It recaps any known GPC and teaches rare graphemes, including phoneme facts, which are ultra rare graphemes, but may help explain some exceptions, such as place names and cultural influences that they might have had on place names, which won't always be relevant, but if you're living in a particular place with a particular name and it's spelt in an unusual way, anything that makes it relevant or that is relevant for the children is always really useful and interesting to unlock looking into spelling in that way. In the overview, there is a blank column that can be used to track teaching, as teaching of 4C may begin in Year 1, and this can then be passed on to the Year 2 teacher knowing which have been covered. So it's literally a blank column that you can tick which of those you have taught and where you have got to. New characters in 4C, they are linked to the Year 2 spelling objectives to emphasise their importance, such as Dazzle the Poodle for LE ending. Character fact sheets in the resources are there. There have never been, and there still aren't, any books in Chapter 4C, so you don't need to worry about any books that you might need to get. Just if it's in the Year 2 spelling appendix in the national curriculum, there are new characters, but there are no books or flashcards. Year 2 don't necessarily have to have daily lessons, but they must be in the order of the planning, and they're still grouped into weeks. But if you wanted to split them into individual lessons, you could. They are numbered up to 100, plus 2 weeks of assessment and application at the end. So there are 102 lessons to be taught in Year 2. So it's up to you how you want to do that. But they don't have to be taught daily if your timetable didn't allow for that. Now, assessment and application weeks. There's new guidance for formative and summative assessment in assessment and application weeks. There are activities provided for the rest of the class to do. So the idea is that we didn't want to just in the medium term planning say this is your week for assessment and you're trying to assess each child individually and then had to come up with something for the others to do. Now we have plans for these. So There are activities provided for the rest of the class, 3 10-minute activities that they can do independently so that you can carry out the assessments. Of course, if you've got the help of an additional adult, they can support the children on these, but it means that absolutely everything within Phonics Shed is planned for you. Looking at the planning guidance for instructions on how to locate and deliver the assessments in these weeks. It will give you everything you need to know to do your assessments and also what the rest of the class should be doing. We've also got phonics screening check planning to give other children activities to complete which are relevant to the screening check, and they can independently practice these whilst you are doing the assessment and whilst the assessment is going ahead. So if I go back to these activities, 3 10 minutes, I think they roughly follow 1 reading, 1 writing, and 1 activity online. And then going back to the phonics screening check, when it comes to doing the official screening check and you are assessing or you have an adult doing the assessments, what I have done, and I know teachers have done in the past who have taught the screening check, they have taken, for example, the secure pupils first to do the screening check, and then those other children that might need a little bit more input or more practice have been sort of waited, haven't gone first, and they have had the chance then to undergo extra practice using these independent activities. But also some of these activities are things like role playing the check and doing that with another pupil. So, for example, if you have a pupil that's particularly anxious about it, they will have been able to role play that and therefore will know what to expect. There are also things such as marking sound buttons on the screening check, which the children are able to do in the check. So if you've got children that need some extra practice doing that, or that's something that you want them to do, of course they will have had so much practice leading up to this point, but it's just a really nice extra way to get some of those children that are still feeling a bit anxious or not secure any extra practice possible before they sit the check, rather than going through alphabetically in order of child's name. Chapter 1 assessments. So there are suggestions for classroom areas for the rest of the class to have the opportunity to independently cover for each element for Phonics Shed whilst Chapter 1 assessments are underway. So different from my previous slide from the 3 10-minute activities, because Chapter 1 children are pre-reading and writing and in a very different classroom setting. But the suggestions for classroom areas let them have the opportunity to do all of those areas independently, and if there are extra adults in the room, to make observation on those whilst the teacher's carrying out the assessment. On Quiz Shed, it says all of this in the guidance. I really would recommend reading the guidance. But the other thing we've got on Quiz Shed, there is 1 quiz which covers all of the elements within Chapter 1, and then there are additional quizzes for each of the elements. The use of these is completely optional. It could be used as a summative assessment, or you can use them absolutely how you like, but we have created them and they are there for you, and we have tried really hard to make them early years friendly as possible, because obviously the children doing this are really young. Everything on how to use these is in the Chapter 1 assessment guidance. One way that I know we recommend using these is to maybe do the 1 singular quiz which covers all the elements, and then if you identify a particular element where either there's a particular weakness or you're unsure of the outcome of some of the things that they answered, then select and maybe go over the quiz which is just for that particular element, rather than having to do all of these different quizzes of each element for every child, which would be very time consuming. Those are there, but I really recommend all the answers or any answers to any questions that I find, they're nearly always in the guidance, so I really recommend you read it. Then we have our Fluency Focus lessons. So these are the most commonly confused phonemes, and they are sometimes the focus, as well as they have other skills as the focus, such as punctuation, schwa, and ed endings. I've included the overview of these here. Lesson plans follow similar to usual structure, and they are throughout the scheme. Now, the fluency focus, we refer to it as Goldilocks reading. So not too fast, not too slow, and there's never any sort of speed reading, anything like that. Each lesson includes a Flix fluency focus, and I've just pasted a small example down here. It's kind of a short passage, and they all follow the same structure, looking at focus words, practicing reading these together with an activity on the short passage. And this would be a differentiated activity. There might be, depending on the focus, some choral reading, and everything in the passage will be slightly easier than the week of the planning that the children are at, because fluency is the focus rather than learning something new and the decoding. So children really need to feel confident in what they're reading. And they are throughout the scheme and usually at the end of each chapter. There is also a new, you won't need it yet, but a new Phonics Screening Check Simulator tool online on the platform. The difference in this, you can repeat the same screening check or the same word list with each child so that you can compare the results, and you can see the overview of results in graphemes and words. So if you click on Phonics Shed, usually you'll be presented with scheme. If you go across the top and click screening sessions, here you'll be able to have a log of all your screening sessions, and you can create new ones too. You can also do this via the usual way that you've done it before. So it will open a window, you can create a new session, you can either select a past paper or you can select a randomly generated list. The randomly generated lists are still based on the proper guidelines, so it's not going to be a completely random list. It will still follow the Phonics Shed check guidelines on how it's laid out and what's included. Then you will have your sessions and you can click launch. It will say the amount of pupils in there, what your word list is and for which group. And then when you open these, you'll have all your pupils down the left-hand side, whether they have done this assessment or not, and you can then just click launch and go through the phonics screening check with each pupil. And then it will create a lovely grid, and you can see either the mistakes by the graphemes, or if you click on words, that will be the words in your check, and you can then compare how the children have got on and if there's anything you need to urgently revise. So that's a really lovely, useful tool which is live now. The other thing we've got, which you might have seen if you have other products with us, we've got lots of avatar updates. There's loads of new free accessories. There are different hairstyle options, more inclusive options. We've got things like wheelchairs, hearing aids, different hats, different headwear, hairstyles, mouths, lots and lots of different things which are free. And you can also have pets now, which is really exciting. Lots of new backgrounds, flags, t-shirts, handheld items. So big avatar update too, which is always good motivation. And then I've just included here at the end any other updates that I could think of. So based on feedback, we've reduced additional doubles planning to 1 week. Year 1, Summer 2, Week 1 planning teaches skills for the phonics screening check. So that's in addition to the assessment week plan, which I mentioned, where we had independent activities for the other children. Prior to that, we're actually teaching the skills for the screening check. And then we have World Nursery Rhyme Week resources, which is actually really soon, 10th to the 14th of November. You will find these, there's now 3 years worth on our website. If you go to Phonics Shed, Classroom Resources and Event Resources, you've got this year's and also the previous 2 years. And the Phonics Shed content lead really wanted me to emphasize that those resources are really lovely. You don't just have to use them for Nursery Rhyme Week. They're really lovely and really helpful, and there's some really nice things in there. So I'd urge you just to go and have a look at those. Let me have a look. And the only other thing is that now we have planning for assessment weeks. We have planning for the screening check, preparing for the screening check. We have our recap weeks, consolidation and intervention weeks. So we really are, everything that you need is And everything that you will see on the medium-term plan is honestly there and it's planned for you. So we've really tried to make sure that we've covered everything. And even if you're in a consolidation and intervention week and you can't see any particular, maybe you don't need any sort of interventions, then it goes over consolidating skills, which children will need regardless. And then finally, 4B lesson update is grapheme comparison posters on same spelling, different phoneme resources. So those are on there as well. I'm just going to have a check and see if you've got any Q&A, if there's anything in there. But that concludes my webinar for today. I hope you found it useful. It will be recorded and we'll put it on YouTube, and our webinar page on EdShed usually kind of is on there within 2 days, I would say. So direct anyone to that who you think would find this useful. Right, let me just have a quick look and see. Haven't got anything yet. If you do have any particular burning questions, or you're struggling to do anything just to do with your account generally, if you email support@edshed.com, that goes straight through to both myself and the support team, and we're always here to help with anything, whether it's teaching related or admin related, payment related, anything. But if we haven't got any questions, which I'm just going to double check, then I will stop that webinar here. Thank you so much for listening and taking the time to learn about Phonics Shed updates. Have a lovely evening.